If you are the type of company that sends a lot of emails and has to meet very aggressive revenue targets, and you've noticed that the more you send, the more you earn, but the more you send, the more you end up on spam, then this video is for you. It's a specific guide for high frequency senders on what exactly they need to do to combat spam. And I'm gonna show you things you won't find anywhere else. Obviously, I'm assuming you already know about engaged segments and how they work and all of the usual best practices. I have a video on this YouTube channel that tells you everything you need to know about segmentation. So if that's not you, go watch that video first, apply the techniques you learned in that video, and then come back to this video once you've increased the volume and you still see that you have spam issues. Okay, let's get started with some quick definitions so that we're on the same page. If you want to create a revenue, then you have to follow this formula. A revenue is a function of how many recipients actually see a message that you sent, multiplied by the percentage of recipients who saw the message and purchased, right? So if people don't see the message, they're not gonna buy. And if they see the message, but the message doesn't really resonate, they're not gonna buy. And obviously, getting them to purchase after they've seen the message has a lot to do with the content, which is a whole separate video for another topic. But in terms of maximizing the number of people that see the message, there's some very specific components to that, right? Like it's segmentation, it's the frequency of the messages. The more you send, the more messages people see, obviously. And then it's deliverability, how many of those emails end up in somebody's inbox as opposed to their spam folder. In this video, we're gonna talk specifically about deliverability. And the goal really, if you wanna have the maximum possible revenue, is to send to as many recipients as possible content that is likely to get them to buy without landing on spam. And the reason why I say this is what you've probably seen or what you will see if you start doing high frequency sends is that, of course, the more you send, the more you earn, but the more you send, the more you end up on spam. So there's this tension between aggressive revenue generating emails and spam complaints. And you're gonna be balancing those two in a very fine way. But first, why do we land on spam in the first place? Number one, there's something wrong with your email authentication setup, the technical deliverability stuff. It's actually not that hard. We're gonna cover it later on. Number two, you are sending too many messages at the same time to the same people. Obviously, that's spam. Number three, too many emails are bouncing. That's a super negative deliverability signal to all inbox providers. If that happens, you are in trouble. I'll show you how to mitigate this. Number four, too many people are reporting your messages as spam. Duh, of course, that increases your spam complaints and sends every other message into the spam inbox. And lastly, something that's more qualitative is that the message and the content you send has irrelevant, disrespectful, or otherwise frustrating content, which makes everything else worse. Now, there's a fine point here. Unsubscribes don't really matter. Often companies come to me and they're like, hey, our unsubscribes are up, oh, too many people unsubscribe, what do we do? It doesn't affect deliverability. If anything, an unsubscribe is a preferable action than people reporting your emails as spam. So don't worry too much about unsubscribes. There's value in decreasing them because, of course, if people unsubscribe, they'll never see your messages. So it's best that they do receive and see some of them. I don't sweat that much about them. It's the least important factor when it comes to your overall deliverability. So let's talk about the technical setup. You either know what this is, so this doesn't matter, or you don't know what this is, in which case I'm gonna make it super simple for you. Those are basically little text records that you add to your website's DNS settings, and then in so doing affect your sending domains that tell the inbox providers that you are who you say you are. At the end of the day, this is a simple copy-paste job, and there's tons of help articles. Klaviyo has tons of material about it. They tell you exactly what you have to do. The only thing you need to do is copy and paste a little bit of text into your website DNS. And if you don't know what the website DNS is, then your developer will. So don't sweat about this. It's a very easy setup. It's of course required that you do this well, and you have to do this well at the beginning, otherwise nothing else will matter, but just follow the instructions and you're gonna be fine. You are sending too many messages. That's another very common reason why you might be having deliverability issues. The way to combat this is to find the segmentation video in this channel, go through every step that I described in that process, and then you're not gonna have this issue anymore. And if you do have this issue anymore, the way you can check is just create create a segment of people that have received 3 messages in the last 4, 6, 8 hours, 20 hours, 24 hours in a narrow time frame, and then open a few profiles within that segment to see and reverse engineer really what journeys or campaigns might be overlapping, and then you can make corrections from the bottom up. It's actually super simple to fix this. What do you do when too many emails are bouncing? That's slightly more complicated. So the first thing you need to do is understand why are emails bouncing. What's the reason? And thankfully, Klaviyo and all modern providers tell you what the bounce reason is. You just head over to deliverability, you go to bounce details, and then you'll see that, okay, in this case, there was a number of emails bouncing because of content, right? And then like this was all for Apple, and then for Verizon, the mailbox wasn't available. It tells you on a high level what's going on. The next thing you need to do is that you head over to a single metric deep dive report. You can call this like the bounce report or what have you. And of course, you have to go to custom reports to build that. It's super simple. You add bounced email, you summarize the number of bounces, and then you can filter by campaign name or like by flow, depending on, you should do both actually to see what the highest bounce rate is. And then you will end up with something that looks a little bit like this. You'll see that there's like a specific email that had tons of bounces. And then as we saw, the reason why that email bounced was content. We're gonna open that email, and then the content looks like this. It's highly clickbaity. Don't do that. Apple is flagging this as problematic. Avoid it and you're gonna be fine. That's the first step, how you can troubleshoot bounces. The second step, and similarly, by the way, if it were in the flows, you would be adding filters to like exclude people that are soft bouncing ones so that they go out of the Klaviyo account straight away. But that's, I guess, relatively easy to figure out. One part that you may not know about is what we call email validation tools. And there's tools like Bouncer, Million Verifier, there's like many. I'm not gonna promote any, but they are all doing more or less the same thing. And what they do is that they validate if an email is actually good to message, right? And there's too many use cases. You can use this to validate old emails, such as when you try to reactivate a dormant list, or in case you're acquiring tons of new leads daily, hence a sender. That's why I'm making this video for you, who is acquiring thousands of new customers a day, thousands of new leads a day, and you are worried that your deliverability will suffer unless you do everything right. In that case, you can implement email validation through API to happen proactively. So basically, people will just not be added to your Klaviyo account unless Bouncer or Million Verifier or any other tool that you might be using for validation verifies and confirms that those emails are good to go. They need to get a seal of approval or they don't get into your account. And this will dramatically reduce bounce rates, and in so doing, dramatically improve the deliverability and inboxing of your messages. Okay, we're getting into the fun part. What do you do when you have too many spam complaints? The first thing you should know, I'm sorry to break it to you, spam complaints you see on Klaviyo, MailChimp, or like any other ESP, they're just not accurate. They're just approximations of what technologists think is happening. To find the actual spam complaints, you need to use the Postmaster tool that the inbox provider is giving you. And if you don't know what it is, it's basically a free tool that they give you to monitor the health of your sending. And the reality is that there's usually like a massive discrepancy between what you see on Klaviyo and what is actually happening on Postmasters. In this case, what we see here, it's actually crazy. The spam rates that this company has, like they are incredibly high. The threshold where you should be at is below this red line. And as you can see, they often go above that red line, which is like horrible. And the first thing is, of course, you have to be monitoring this. Like, unless you know this, you might keep sending emails and the situation might get worse. So what do you do? What do you do with this? There's a couple of things. First of all, you have to understand how is this measured. It's basically the total users that received the message, right? What percentage of them reported the message as spam? It's expressed as a percentage. And like you want to stay at below 0.3. Above 0.3, you're violating the policy and you don't want to do this. So if you see this very simple definition, you will actually understand that you have two main levers. You can either reduce the total spam complaints, which is what most people think about, or you can actually increase the number of Gmail users that receive the message. Because if you do that, the percentage will go down naturally, right? And just to make this super clear, imagine that you may have like 640,000, this is real data by a project, by the way, you may have 640,000 monthly recipients, which ends up to like 21K daily recipients, right? And let's say that those are your spam complaints. It ends up at 0.44, which is a policy violation. Now, if you were to add an extra 20K recipients per day for a total of 1.2 million sends per month, you would have suddenly 0.23 spam rate, which would put you well below the compliance rate and would in a way clear you fully for Google. And if you were to do that, you wouldn't even need to change the content. You would just be sending more emails to Gmail users. And of course, you might be thinking like, how do you do this? Like, how does it work? Well, there's other technologies that allow you to do this. Like one we use is called Wormy. You can find it online or you can reach out to me and I'm going to give you a discount because they are partners of ours. But the way it works basically is that they give you a seed list and you can purchase a seed list for Gmail, for Yahoo, for like anything that you might be in trouble with, right? And then you would be simply messaging that list separately. And then that list would create positive engagement that would, in a way, keep the spam complaints under control. And the way this works is that you have improvement not because you like actually reduce the spam complaints, but simply because you improve the ratio of spam to non-spam, which is actually very powerful and very straightforward, and it can resolve many of the problems that you might be having like this. Now, how do you do this? Do you just like start blasting the entire seed list like in a single day and just like do this multiple times a day? Even no. The best practice is you send one message to the seed list per day and you do this periodically. Like you start with, not periodically, progressively rather. You start with 500 emails and then you send those at 20% per hour. So it's a gradual send, not 500 at the same time. And then the next day you double the volume. You send 1,000 and then you double the volume, 2,000, and then you double the volume, 4,000, and then 8,000, 16,000, until you eventually reach your max. In this case, it's 20,000, always spread over a period of hours. It's just the best practice, doesn't hurt to do this. And of course, if you do this, if you scale the volume to the max, you can then also, on top of this, automate the entire thing through a flow that sends those emails on a daily basis. And if you do this, I promise you, you'll see tremendously improved engagement and much less spam in your sending. Okay, at this point, I've showed you how to essentially increase the number of recipients and improve your spam complaint rate in that way. There's a second way, which is that you lower the actual spam complaints. And of course, that's the ideal case scenario. It's also free. You don't need to pay for an external tool like Wormy. Now, what most of you do is that you take a look at this and then you're like, oh, we're above this threshold, so like we have an issue, but then this doesn't update on a daily basis. There's a little bit of delay. It's hard to make decisions. Can't really tell. Was it my campaign? Was it the flow change that they made? Maybe the traffic source changed. You can't really make decisions by watching this curve alone. What you can do is take a look at what's called the feedback loop. If you head over here, there's a section that says feedback loop. And then the feedback loop is essentially a way for Google or whichever other postmaster that you might be using to communicate back to you what is the source of spam. And what you see here is codified, obviously, which is why most of you are like, I don't know what this is. I'm not even going to look at it. But what it really is very simple. This is the public ID of your Klaviyo account, right? If you go to settings, etc., you will find in the API section your public ID. This is essentially your account's name on Klaviyo. Basically, that's like an ID. And then this is the equivalent for SendGrid because Klaviyo sometimes sends through SendGrid. And then everything else that you see is either a campaign, in which case it looks like a long message like this. It's like not a campaign, it's a message. It will essentially open up an actual message on Klaviyo. If you preview a message on Klaviyo, you will see that the URL at the top says campaign preview, and then it has a little code that looks like this. If you replace it with that code, it will show you the actual campaign that had this spam complaint. Now, obviously, if you take a look here, you'll see that this one, for example, had 44 and this one had 27. So like one is almost twice as worse as the other. And if you do like a deeper analysis, you'll end up with things like campaigns that have high spam complaints, campaigns that have low spam complaints, And you're gonna do, of course, less of those that have spam complaints that are high and more of those that are low. Now, if you do this, you'll instantly notice one thing. Those that have the highest spam complaints will likely have the highest revenue as well. So what you really wanna do is break it down a step further. You wanna have a list of campaigns that have high revenue and low spam complaints. Keep doing this. Low revenue and high spam complaints, stop doing this. High revenue, high spam complaints, iterate on those, make them perhaps a little less aggressive or like try to be more descriptive in the content as opposed to like baiting people and so on. And then those will likely improve over time. So that's how you handle this part. And the reality of the situation is that if you are a lifecycle marketer, you have like 1,000 things to do on a daily basis, right? Like you have to understand the data, you have to be sending, you have to be analyzing, like make sure the automation structure is correct, you have to communicate, there's a project management piece. It's hell. So my recommendation, do this in a structured way. Block out time once a week, once a month, depending on like the requirements of your role, the requirements of how your company functions, and make sure it happens every single time that you say you will. Because unless you do this, nothing else matters. I hope this video was helpful. It should be helpful. Most people don't know about this. At least I haven't met a lot of people that know about this. And again, if your objective ultimately is to create revenue, this is a direct result of the number of people who see your messages. And what I showed you is going to help more people see your messages. So apply what you learned and text me back or comment below to let me know if it was helpful.